he is not done. And whether that is bringing back some of the guys or bringing in some new guys, the draft, free agency, like there's options.
I feel like last year, everybody's, talking about him having a down year. The gadget runs that they had with Deebo weren't that productive. He wasn't breaking as many tackles. And also, he wasn't really reliable, when it came to beating man coverage. And we saw this in the Super Bowl a couple of years as well, where he had like 3 catches on like 11 or 12 targets. So that would be my question. And that's sort of kind of why I felt the way I did, following the acquisition of him. Because I just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about Deebo. If you want him to be your number one wide receiver, you want him to be your man coverage beater, you are setting yourself up, for failure. That is not who Deebo Samuel is. It's not who Deebo Samuel has ever been. Deebo Samuel in 2021, when he was a 1,400-yard receiver and a first-team All-Pro, was not a man coverage beating guy. That's just not who he is. But if you want a guy, Ant, who can find soft spots in zones, intelligently get there, he can make yards appear magically after the catch. You want him to run your jet sweeps, run your screens, which, by the way, are an enormous part of the Washington Commanders' offense, then he's your guy. Like, the best version of him is the best guy at that in the whole league. Now, I think that version of him is probably gone. There are probably other guys I would take in that role over him, but this is why Deebo's best days ahead of him are paired with someone like a Terry McLaurin, paired with someone who can win against man coverage. And Terry does it differently than a lot of folks because he doesn't necessarily like Terry's not a guy who's creating a ton of separation. He's just the best contested catch guy in the league. But Terry is, for all intents and purposes, open against man coverage. Zach Ertz coming back gives you another option against man coverage. But I think part of the decline of Deebo last year, he had the pneumonia thing, he had some injuries, but they also didn't have Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL in week 2 or whatever it was. So all of a sudden, he's becoming the focal point, and Kittle's in and out of the lineup all year. Actually, Kittle had a pretty good year, but he did miss, I think, a couple of games. And Deebo is going to be a better role player and complementary piece. Now, when I say role player and complementary piece, that can still be a big role, but he can't be the guy you build your whole offense around from a passing game standpoint. And that's why when he is paired with the younger version of Ayuk, or not the younger version, the healthier version of Ayuk, McCaffrey, all those dudes, Kittle, he can just drill a defense because you're so focused on the other guys that he gets a little bit of space, and then that's where he's magical. So if you can have Terry and the scheme and Ertz and, B-Rob or Eckler or one of these other guys taking some focus away, now Deebo can be the best version of himself.
Now, I think you said it perfectly. And I think the other part to it was more so the money for the guy. But, again, this is a low-risk, high-reward kind of a situation.
Yeah,
so.
$17 million is a lot. I mean, it's a lot of money, cash-wise. I would take $17 million. But, NFL wide receiver money, it's not crazy.
Yeah.
They can afford it. That part, to me, is not that big of a deal. Let's go to Charles. Charles, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Thank you for having me. This is easy for me. Deebo is going to bring so much. Well, one is going to let Eckler kind of take some of the pressure off of Eckler because he can do some of the same things with the screens and, the short passes. Another thing is the knock on him was he only had that one good season. But if you have Kittle, you have McCaffrey, you have to spread the ball around. We don't have those weapons. So Deebo is definitely going to be a benefit to our offense. He fits right in perfectly with what Cliff wants to do, like you said, all the time. It's no money. Well, we have the money to cover it. I'm fine with it. I'm totally happy with it.
Yeah, man. I agree with
Adam
you.
Peterson.
That too, right? That's, I mean, especially on the personality part, like he and Deebo know each other real well. Charles, thanks for the call. And I also think, I'm glad Charles said something because it made me look this up real quick and refresh my and now all of your memories. Like, Deebo's 2021 is insane. He had 1,400 yards on 77 catches. That is preposterous. Preposterous. He had 768 yards, Anthony, in 2021 after contact.
That's ridiculous.
Last year, hold on.
That is ridiculous.
Commanders 2024 stats. Hold on.
77 for 1,400?
Yeah. Last year, total, the second leading receiver behind Terry was Zach Ertz, yardage-wise. He had 654 yards. Deebo had 768 in 2021 after contact. After contact. Now, that said, in 2022, he had total. This is total. I'm done with the yak yards. 56 catches for 632. 23, he had 60 catches for 892. And then last year, he had 51 catches for 670. So even in his quote-unquote down year last year, 51 catches would have been third on the team for Washington. And what did I say, 670?
Yeah.
That would have been second. That's more yards than Ertz had last year. And that's in a down year where he played 15 games. So, again, everything is relative. The biggest dip that Deebo took last year was his rushing yardage. He went from averaging about 6 yards a carry. Last year he had 136 yards on 42 attempts. He had 232 yards on 42 attempts 2 years ago. So he just didn't have a good rushing season. But that is what it is. As a receiver, like that, he actually had an okay year last year. It's just not nearly as good, obviously, as 21, not as good as the year prior. We had almost 900 yards receiving. But he had a year that would have still been an upgrade based off of what Washington had at the receiver position, and that's without Jaden Daniels throwing to him and Terry McLaurin opposite. So, if you want to put a positive spin on it, that's probably a good way to do it. Let's keep it rolling with the calls on Deebo Samuel before you hear Logan Paulson break down how he fits into the offense at 5 o'clock here on the Team 980. Plus, why are all these trades happening? A ton of trades today. Deebo trade over the weekend. We actually predicted this last week in Indianapolis. Dan Pizzuta and Brooke Pryor and I did our second annual reporter roundtable, and Dan predicted a bunch of trades. So we're going to share that conversation with you for the first time today, coming up at 5:30, the trades portion of our roundtable, and then we will put the full roundtable for you to listen to. It's about 40 minutes long on demand in our podcast feed and on YouTube at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. But more calls now on Deebo. Let's start with Kenny in Charlotte. Kenny, thanks for holding through the break, man. Appreciate it. What you got for us on Deebo on this 5 Check Tuesday?
Hey, appreciate it, man. If it makes sense, I like the move 100%, but I can't say that I'm in love with it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like I'm glad that he came to the team in this era with the staff and especially the training staff, because I feel like what they did with Zach Ertz last year gives me hope that they'll take care of Deebo and maybe get a little bit more out of him this year. But it's more so like, honestly, it's not Pacquiao and Mayweather in their prime, but I still wanted to see it. I paid for the fight. You know what I mean? So it's that's just my sentiment. I like it a lot, but I don't love it. But do you think it's a clear upgrade from, receiver 2 on down from what we had last year?
I do. I mean, that's the thing is, like, I think that if you have to look at him as, like, is Deebo Samuel better than Olamide Zaccheaus at the stuff that they asked OZ to do last year? I think Deebo's better than OZ. I would still take OZ back. I think OZ's a good football player. But, like, if you're telling me a guy who runs screens, runs short routes, gets open in zone coverage, like finds the spot, sits down, and then has to run after catch and make plays, brings a level of physicality and blocks, like, Deebo's better at basically all that stuff than OZ. That's the role he's going to play. He's not coming in to be a feature focal point of the offense. They'll get him his touches, but like he is not. This is a move on the margins, but it moves the margins in the right direction, and those margins are going to move one way or the other. So you might as well move them in the right direction, which I think is the thing that people have to square. And I think Kenny, what you kind of captured there is like I like it. But it's hard to love it just because there's not enough investment to love it. Like, he is not a centerpiece type of move, even though he's a big name that we all know that was featured on the Netflix show last year.
Exactly. And it's like, so let me ask you this one last question.
Yeah, fire away.
If you have Noah Brown and you have Zacchaeus and you have McCaffrey like we had last year, who do you when you bring Deebo in, who do you get rid of first?
I think OZ is probably the guy. Like, I think that, Luke is going to be here because he was drafted and he's the contract, he's younger or whatever. I think Noah's a bigger body, different type of receiver. Like, he's a dirty work guy. And he did a great job of, like, drawing PIs and stuff and had some vertical stretch to the offense, even though it wasn't in the form of catches last year. But, like, his blocking and his physicality and what he brought and the big body nature to be able to post up, like, that's something that they don't have elsewhere on the roster. So if you tell me the receiving core, because the other thing is like, I'll go get Deebo and Cup, and you have people saying stuff like that. I'm good on the veteran market. Maybe if like you don't like Noah or someone, right? Whether that someone is Darius Slayton or like one of those type of guys. Fine. I need a bigger body / someone with vertical stretch speed. Deebo, Luke, Terry, and then I want a young guy. I want someone with some youth to come into the room, whether that guy's got pop or size, like juice, vertical speed, size, short area quickness. I don't really care. I want another younger receiver in that room. I don't need another Cooper Kupp at this point. I don't need anybody else on the outside. I just need one like bargain / value type of guy to play on the outside opposite of Terry. Deebo's your slot move whatever guy. Luke's moving around doing whatever Luke does, and then give me a younger guy. And that's my receiver room, and I'm pretty good with it with Jaden Daniels, and I want to spend my money elsewhere.
Exactly. The catches, the drop passes and the fumbles didn't help the kids last year, even though he came on strong.
For sure.
But I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, Kenny. All right, let's see if we can knock out these two calls real quick. Let's go to Millie first. Millie, thanks as always for calling. Welcome back to the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoffman. Thank you so much for taking my call, sir. I like the move. You have a lot of people with their judgments out here saying, which Deebo Samuels are we going to get? And regardless of how people feel about it, it's still Deebo Samuels. And he's still going to be a great asset to our team, let alone. And I would say it will take some heat off of Terry McLaurin, knowing that, he's still, regardless of everything from last year, we do rely on him and we want to get him the ball. But, when you don't have eyes on him, you're going to have to worry about Deebo out there. And it will create, I think it will, I would also say it will create some other features, because I would assume that AP is not done, as far as picking, anybody else that may come along with this ride of this new regime. More so, I just look forward to seeing how creative Cliff Kingsbury will, have him, inserted into whatever scheme that he'll do. But he's a soldier, he does the dirty work, and regardless of anything, I know he's up to the task, and I'm just happy to see a new face. And, guys are starting to come here. And I'll say, I'm very happy that, we have somebody, another team, another player that's coming here. And I'll piggyback off just my last take. Piggyback off the last caller, I believe in this staff to make sure that he's 100% and that he's okay to go when it's time. And so, that's my take, though, Hoffman. Thank you for taking my call, man.
Yeah, you got it. I think that's a great point, too. AP is not done. And whether that is bringing back some of the guys or bringing in some new guys, the draft, free agency, like there's options. There's not a ton offensively out there, but like they'll find someone to add a little bit more juice to this offense as well. And that was what was needed last year. This was a prolific offense. They didn't need a ton. They needed to upgrade some, and they'll do that. All right, let's wrap up with Bill. Bill, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, I'll make it quick because I know you're headed for a break. But when you said, I think he's a little bit better than Zacchaeus and does a lot of things, Zacchaeus does a lot of good things and he's got a little bit of an edge. Like, if that's the case, then I don't like the move at all because you're paying him so much money. But I personally think they went after him because they still think he could be a game changer, perhaps with a fresh start. If that's the case, I love the move. So
Right.
I just think they got to be thinking long shot if they're going to pay him that kind of money, or not long shot, but serious upside versus keeping, a known quantity.
So here's what I would say, Bill. You're correct that they probably think he can be a big upgrade over OZ, and if he's the 2023 version of him, that's correct. But 2024, like if 2024 is the floor, him as a runner, like is still, that's an element that you don't get with OZ, even if it wasn't that great in 24. But if you get the 2023 version of him, he's a pretty significant upgrade over Olamide Zacchaeus. The other thing though that I'll say about the money, and I think this is worth pointing out, this is not prohibitive money for them in any way. There is no player they're going to miss out on because they can't afford to pay him based off of where their cap situation is, and that is the luxury of having a rookie quarterback contract be your starter at the level that Jaden Daniels is. Like, he is such a discount and is counting so little towards the cap that you have an extra, based off the production you're going to get at that position, that should cost you $60 million. It's going to cost them like $6 million. And so they have so much extra money to play with that you can say, like, okay, are we going to get $1 out of every dollar in terms of production that we want from Deebo? Maybe not. Maybe he's not a $17 million receiver. But if I can get $14 million of production out of my $17 million Deebo Samuel, that extra $3 million, like, that's not going to hurt them in 2024 or in 2025 because they have enough space. So I think it's a great point to bring up, but I hope that makes sense.
Version.
Yeah, exactly.
That does make sense. Thanks.
Exactly. And you always are betting on free agents anyway. That's the nature of it. Bill, thanks for the call. I think that's a really smart one. All right, that's where we wrap the calls for now. We can take a little bit more later on in the show.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.